welcome to Finance Conversations. This is the 51st episode of the Merging Life and Money Show, and I am delighted to be here today. For those of you who do not know me, I am your host, Marie-Jo César. I help professional women bridge the gap between life and money by teaching them the relevant skills and knowledge they need to take control of their money, manage their finances, and understand that they can live their best life with the money they have. Thank you for joining in today. So if you are watching the replay, make sure to type #replay in the chat and leave me some comments and questions. Welcome, welcome, and welcome. I come to you every Thursday live at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to share valuable information about how to achieve financial wellness and live your life with means and meaning. Today, my special guest, Eric Dudley and I will be talking to you about 5 common mistakes people make with their finances and how to prevent them. Eric Dudley is an independent, experienced, holistic financial advisor whose specialties are retirement planning, investing solution, and life insurance. Eric is also the founder and president of Dudley Financial Group, and I must note that one of Dudley's Financial Group's main goals is to help their clients build their best tomorrow while protecting them today. So welcome, Eric, to the Merging Life and Money Show, and welcome, followers and listeners. Thank you for joining in today. So grab a pen and a notebook, as you might want to take some notes to discuss further with family members, friends, colleagues, etc. And because it is about sharing values that could benefit others. So remember, if you have any comments or questions, make sure to put them in the chat. And as you may know, the main objective of the Merging Life and Money Show and my why, my very strong why, is to empower as many women as I can with what I know about money and finance. So let us start. I will start by saying that you do not need to be rich to be smart with your money. Okay? The first thing we learn about money is that it's difficult to get a hold of. And when we have the money, it seems to disappear at the speed of light sometimes. So where does your money go? On bills, food, transportation, and the list goes on forever, it seems. So before you lose hope and think that you are the only one in that situation, Eric and I will address the 5 common mistakes most people make with their finances, and we will tell you how to avoid them. So we will be focusing on student loan debt, large auto loans, not investing early and not investing enough, career stagnation, and buying too much house, in that order. So I anticipate that today's show might go over our regular 30 minutes, okay? So, but it's an important one. Let me start with a few disclaimers. Everything said in the Merging Life and Money Show is for general, informational, and educational purposes only, and is not intended to constitute legal, tax, accounting, or investment advice, and should not be relied on for tax, legal, investment, or accounting advice. All right? So you should consult your own tax, legal, investment, or accounting advisor before engaging in any transactions whatsoever. Now, in the United States, student loan debt has grown significantly over the past several decades and is the second largest slice of household debt after mortgages. It is even bigger than credit card debt. So lots of students use loans to cover a portion of their education costs, right? So each year, between 30% and 40% of all undergraduate students borrow federal student loans. And by the time they graduate with a bachelor's degree, 7% of students have incurred educational debt, and borrowers are confronted with a number of difficult decisions. Okay, the matter seems to have worsened, and now the whole issue of student loan, as you may know, has become a political football, it seems. So, Eric, tell us more about this phenomenon.
Well, MJ, thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it. Student loan debt is just one of the biggest problems we have in America right now with finances. Um, right now, the average cost of sending a child to school in America is about $35,000 a year on average for throughout the country. $35,000 a year. I mean, gosh, that has gone up over 6% in inflation per year over the last 30 years for student loan or excuse me, student tuition. That is a lot. It's more than twice as much as the regular inflation for everything else. So you can see why people would wind up having huge amounts of debt. The average graduate graduates with at least $39,000 in debt. The average.
Wow.
That's starting off already in a big hole. And whenever you're first starting off, you're not making top dollar. You're not making. You're not in a position where you can have a lot of debt. You, or at least you shouldn't be. But unfortunately, that's where they are. And also, one of the bigger problems is that when people are going through school and going through college, they're not using enough foresight to think, what kind of return of investment am I getting whenever I'm going through college? They might be majoring in things that they love and have interest in. However, is there a history and is there some facts that prove, hey, when I graduate college, I'm going to be able to make enough money to where I can, justify this type of debt and be able to pay it off quickly. Um, Many people don't do that, and they should be in majoring in majors that would have a better history of returning on investment.
Well, thanks for that. And as I say all the time, you got many, many people graduating from college with a mortgage around their neck, but not a house.
Right.
Right? So tell me, do you have any ideas, any idea whatsoever of what is the default rate among students right now?
No, I don't actually. I don't have that default rate, but I can tell you this: it's pretty high, and you can tell by the political climate that there is in Washington with all of these lobbyists who are trying to get it to where you're able to pay off the government getting to pay off all of the student loan debt. There is a very powerful lobby,
Mhm.
and that's the reason why politicians are flocking to be able to say, "Oh yeah, we're going to pay it off for them," because there's so many people that know that they will never pay off their loan. This will be a loan that they'll pay until the day they die because they just don't have the money to pay it.
Right. That's a sad situation. I could tell you that much. To engage in some studies, hoping that this will lend you your dream job, because that's what you are told by your parents, right? You better be educated in order to land a job that would allow you to have a reasonable standard of living.
Hmm.
But as we could see, there is more to the story, right?
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about auto loans now. I should say large auto loans. So I would say that despite the pandemic, people continued to purchase and borrow. And according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York latest quarterly report on household debt and credit, Americans currently owe in excess of 1.6 trillion in vehicle loan debt alone.
Hmm.
Okay, so this means that auto loan debt is roughly double what it was only probably 10 years ago, and it has increased virtually every quarter since 2010. So as a result, auto loan debt is a third largest category of American household debt after mortgages and student loan. So the question is, can those car buyers afford to buy a car? Okay. So what I found is that more often than not, some people truly should not be adding to their debt. But as the saying goes, there is a sucker born every minute, right? So they will find a financial institution willing to lend them some money that they cannot really afford to borrow. So, Eric, how can we explain this auto loan debt situation?
Well, I think it's a cultural thing in our society where people want what they want when they want it. They are not willing to wait, not willing to work hard now to get what you want in the future. They just want it now, and unfortunately, what that means is that they graduate from college and they decide, well, I deserve to have a car that is really a status symbol. So they wind up going out and getting the BMW or the C class Mercedes instead of something just reliable, and they wind up with just outrageous payments. Right now, on average in the United States, the average car payment for a new car is $563 a month, and the length is 70 months. So almost 6 years at over $550 a month. That is a lot of money for most people. And but why are they getting cars like that? I mean, certainly you can find cars that are cheaper than that that will get you from point A to point B. But it is, I believe, a cultural thing where they feel like they kind of deserve that type of car, and that they wouldn't be seen in another car that maybe wouldn't be that high caliber. And so that's a real problem.
Yeah, it's all about the whole status symbol and want it to be like the neighbor, right? Want it to be like the Joneses. And this I did my show last week was about baby boomers, and I talked about the two generation within the baby boomer generation. So you have the old one, the first 10 years, and you got the second 10 years. And in fact, they are called Generation Jones because that's what this whole wanting to be like the Joneses comes from, because they feel that they work hard. They see their neighbor with the two-car garage, the Beamer, and the Benz, and they're working hard. So I can have that too, right? So they go and get themselves in debt just to be like Mr. Jones next door.
That's
Anyway,
right.
over to the third most common mistake that you identify, which is investing early enough and not investing enough. So I read somewhere that more than three-quarters of Americans feel bad not investing early enough, right? So when it comes to investing, I like to say that a young person is in a favorable position because the age of an investor has a lot to do with the amount of risk he or she can handle, right? So a young investor can maximize earning by taking on greater risks. That's a known factor, right? This is because if a young investor loses money, he or she has a time to recoup the loss through income generation. And for some, this may appear to be a reason for a young investor to bet on high return investment, but this is not the case, right? So rather than engaging in extremely what I would call speculative transaction, a young person should seek I must say firm that have a larger risk but provide a bigger upside potential over time, right? So Eric, tell us about the downside of starting to invest late or and not investing enough.
Well, compounding interest is a powerful, powerful thing. Albert Einstein was quoted as saying that compounding interest is the most powerful force in the universe.
Mm.
So, and he knew a lot about powerful forces in the universe. So
Yeah, of course.
he wasn't kidding about that. It's amazing. But one of the things that compounding interest needs is time. You have to have time to do it and to do it right. Okay, to see the power. Okay, you start looking at compounding interest over a 5-year period, it doesn't seem like much. 10 years, not so much. 15, it starts to look better. 20, even better. 30, wow. And then
Mhm.
40, oh my gosh, I can't
Mhm.
believe I have so much money. Just to give you an example, just going back to what we were talking about with the auto loans. If a
Mhm.
person, instead of buying a car for 70 months at $563 a month, instead bought a car for $363 a month, so a $200 savings. Okay. And if that person were 25 years old and took the $200 a month and were to put it in some type of investment that would average 10% over that same 70-month period, they would wind up with about $22,000, a little more than $22,000 that they would have saved because they would have had some interest over that time, and it would have
Mhm.
grown to $22,700. Pretty cool.
Yep.
However, it gets much cooler than that because now they're 32 years old and they have $22,000 ready to invest. They're not going to spend it; they're going to invest it. So now
Right.
they're going to put it in something else that makes only 10%, which is extremely a very likely thing you can do. Okay, I'm not talking about crazy numbers here. That $22,700, if they kept it in there for 30 years, would wind up with just short of $400,000, and all because they bought a car that was a little more affordable, and they
Yep.
still were able to get from point A to point B.
Mhm.
And they did it whenever they were young and then didn't even touch it. Just let it
Right.
go 10%. Next thing you know, you have an extra $400,000 to be able to live the golden years of your life. You know,
Oh yeah.
compounding interest is powerful. And if
It
you
is
don't,
indeed. It is
yeah,
indeed. Mhm.
if you don't use it, there's no way you can keep up with inflation. Okay, because if you just let it sit in a bank somewhere, then inflation will eat you up. Right now, inflation is at 7.4%. That means that in 10 years, the money that you have in the bank, whatever it is, will be virtually worthless because if you haven't if it's not making 7.4%, it's going to be devalued for sure. And
Absolutely.
and if
Mhm.
it's making 1%, well, it's going to be really devalued. So you really got to take advantage of it. And you got to take advantage of it fast. The key to it is get started early, take 15 to 20% of your net pay, or well, gross pay, of course, if you're doing it, avoiding taxes by like doing a
Mhm.
401k, but
Mhm.
but 15 to 20% for the entire time that you work. If you can do that, you will not have a problem. You will wind up having a great retirement, and you've done a great job and so far ahead of the game. It's amazing. So
Well, great. That's excellent advice there, because I could tell you, people cannot relate, and everybody wants things right away. Unfortunately, in the matter of money, uh, time is your best ally. you know, and of course, everybody who works wants to retire one day, and you just don't decide to retire today for tomorrow, because so you have to plan accordingly. And definitely, the power of compounding interest is really unreal.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, think about it like this: you might be retired for a quarter of your life. Okay. If you're retired for 22, 23 years, that will be a quarter of your life that you don't have to work. If you'll take half of your life, which is about 40 years, and work hard and save diligently 15 to 20%, you could have a quarter of your life just enjoying the fruits of your labor. I got a friend of mine who says it. I love his saying. He says, anytime you get a paycheck, pay yourself
Feel
first.
first. Yep.
Okay. That way you put your money away, you've paid yourself, then you pay the rest of your bills. Okay. You
That's
do that,
yep.
you'll be a happy person
I'm
when you
telling you, and what's worrying as well is the fact that with all the advancement in the medical field and all that, some people find themselves in retirement longer than they ever worked.
Yeah. Hey, let me tell you, I was on the phone just today with a 70-year-old woman
Uh-huh.
who's telling me, Eric, I can't see myself living to be 90. I can't see it. And I said, are you kidding? You're 70 years old. You take no medication. You're in great shape. You exercise all the time. You have no history of any medical problems. Why don't you think you would live to be 90? Even your mom lived to be, she told me her mom lived to be 92. I'm like, how can you not see that possibly get to 90? I
She
mean, just
knows
don't
she
walk in
knows
front of a
something that
bus.
you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know nobody ever thinks. I didn't think I'd make it to my mid 50s, okay? But I did. Here I am. And you better plan for it
Well,
because you
you're
know
a
what?
baby. You're a baby, Eric. Let's move on to the fourth identify common mistake, which is career stagnation. Okay. Well, folks, all I can tell you, do not let career plateau meet you by chance. All right. So staying current and staying ahead are the words to remember if you want to succeed in paced, a fast-paced employment environment that places a premium on skill sets. All right. So, Eric, when did you select career plateau as one of the major money mistakes?
You just can't rest on your laurels. That's really it. I mean, if you rest on your laurels, there's a saying. I don't know if everybody says it, but you got to make hay while the sun is shining.
Right.
Have you ever heard that
Yeah, I
before?
had that before. Yep.
Right. Well, while you're young and while you're healthy and while you're in your working years, you can't just say, I'm good with what I'm doing. I'm comfortable. Comfortable is a word that needs to get out of our vocabulary and to start saying, you know what? I want to be a little more uncomfortable
Right.
because you know what? People are when they're uncomfortable, growing.
Yep.
They're growing. Okay. Just to give you an example of what I'm talking about. Suppose you make $100,000 a year. So you got a good job and you're doing a job that you enjoy and that you're good at. Okay. But if you stay in that job every year, I guarantee you that your employer will give you that 3% raise every year and just go, yep, we love you. Great job. Here's your 3% raise. Have you made extra money? No, you haven't. All you've done is made enough to keep up with inflation. You
Right.
can't buy any more with it. You next year you make 103,000. It's the same as the 100,000 the year before. It's just a little more money to pay more expensive bills. Okay?
Yep.
So you have not increased. You have not gotten better.
Yep.
Eventually, someday, that job might get eliminated. Who knows? There might be a pandemic or something that comes around and wipes out 20% of the workforce and eliminates different types of jobs. Wow, you think that might happen? Yeah, it just did.
Yeah.
And
We're
so,
living it right now, right?
yeah, exactly. And so you cannot rest on your laurels. I mean, every year you need to be saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to do a great job in my career. I'm going to impress, impress, impress. And you know what? I'm going to learn. And every 3 years, start looking in your own. If you're in a company, start looking in your company, but don't just limit it to that. You can look in other companies for upward mobility because if you can go up, how many times you can go from assistant director to regional director to whatever,
Yeah.
whatever the ladder is. Keep climbing, keep challenging yourself, keep growing. You'll be happier because of it. Because if you're complacent, you'll wind up finding reasons to not be happy. Just grow and keep on doing it. And in the long run, you're going to be really happy you did because you're going to make a lot more money. And of course, there's going to be so many more people who are looking at you like, wow, you got some serious skills. I want to employ you,
Right.
or I want to pay you to come over here
Hmm.
because we can't find anybody like you. Because
Right.
frankly, there's not a lot of people who are going to do what I just said.
Right. Well, you know what? Some people are just comfortable. They don't have as much ambition, and And a lot of those people are those who are limiting themselves, thinking that they reach the top of whatever and it's no, they cannot go any further. I beg to differ. I beg to differ totally. But that is great advice. And go on the days where you had a pension and you have you're solidly implanted in your company. Those days are gone, and guess what? They're not coming back.
That's
So you have to look out for yourself, and if it's a if you will live longer because of the advancement that I mentioned, and the fact that people are having healthier lifestyles as well. So but you want to live longer, but you want to have enough money to take you there. But
right.
if you stay and stagnate and plateau in a job forever, well, that retirement is not going to be as great as you thought it could be, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you for that as well, Eric. And our last identified mistake for today's show is buying too much house. So owning an excessive amount of real estate is one of the most prevalent financial concerns confronting Americans today. And by owning, I mean currently owning, right? In other words, obtaining a mortgage for a home that you cannot afford. This is a grave issue. And in this case, if you're in that situation, you must handle it immediately. So, Eric, help me here. What kind of issues may too much home create?
Oh, well, this one is just like the earlier one about buying a too much car, except
Mhm.
it's like it's on steroids. I mean,
Right.
it's way worse because you're talking about something that costs what 30 times as much as a car. So let's just give just an example. Suppose you could afford $1,500 and you say a month for a mortgage and interest and tax and insurance and stuff. So $1,500 a month, and then hey, wow, look at this. These interest rates are so low. They're so low. Wow, we could actually, instead of buying a house that's 2,000 square feet, we can now buy a house that's 3,000 square feet. Okay, man, we just got a humongous house for $1,500 a month. And you think, well, that's fine. That's no problem because I'm paying the same amount. But are you? Because you didn't consider the utilities. The utilities are going to be much higher in a much bigger house. The amount of maintenance that you're going to have to do on that house, painting it will be more expensive. Whenever you change the carpets, which you will have to change the carpets, more expensive. Cleaning it will be much harder. Okay. Whenever you replace air conditioners, there might be two of them instead of one of them. There's always so many more bills that you're going to have to pay because you bought a bigger house than you needed. Also, just furnishing it, unless you just plan on having 1,000 square feet just with nothing in it, um, you're going to wind up having to spend a whole lot more money for it in the long run. So why get a house that's too big? Why get a house? Instead, you could have said, "Hey, look, these interest rates are low. I mean, what I could do instead is just get the 2,000 square foot house, and instead of paying 1,500, pay 1,100."
Right.
See, that makes sense. You don't have too big a house. You're paying less than you thought, and now you're being fiscally responsible. Really, there's a rule, a simple rule that goes like this. Okay, whenever you're buying a house, how much house should you get? Okay, let me pull this thing over. There you go. All right, simple rule is 20% down. Why 20% down? Well, suppose there was a housing collapse, just like we had in 2008. And a lot of people who only put 3% down, they wound up going underwater. That means that they wound up owing more than they could sell the house for.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem because what if they lost their job? They had to relocate. Now they have to sell the house.
Right.
Uh-oh. Now you actually
Yeah.
owe maybe possibly tens of thousands of dollars more than you can pay. That's a
And a
problem.
lot of people experience that.
Yeah, exactly. I know people who did, because when I moved into my neighborhood in Florida, that was in 2011. I know people who had gotten houses foreclosed on in the neighborhood and now moved somewhere else. Okay, so it was, yeah, it was serious. Also, so 20% down, and then don't have a house that you have to pay more than 28% of your net income for the total house expenditures. And that means mortgage, tax, insurance, HOAs, and utilities all combined. So if you make, for instance, if you make $100,000 a year, net, not gross, but net take home pay. So you don't want to have all those that I just mentioned,
Hmm.
more than $28,000. If you do, then you've got too much house. You're pushing the limits on that. Okay. Keep yourself away from the 28%, less than 28. And that way you'll be in a position where you have enough money to pay for other things that you'll need, and you won't be house poor. And house poor is a bad situation because, of course, not only are you always working to keep in that house, but you're not investing. You won't be
Exactly.
able to invest.
You are working for the house.
Yeah, that's right.
Should be the way around, right?
That's right.
Well, that's a good final point here. So, thank you so much, Eric, for enlightening us about those five common mistakes that most people make, believe it or not. And when I was researching the whole thing, it is very common in America. So a lot to think about, and I surely hope that the listeners and the people that are going to catch the replay would identify with and would want to take some action to remedy, to take care of those mistakes along the way. So I am going to wind down and sum it up. So today we talked about student loan debt, right? Which is second after mortgages, right? Then we talked about large auto loans. Then we talked about the not investing early enough and not investing enough, period. We mentioned we spent a little time on career stagnation or career plateau. So you got to grow and along the way and stay on top of your game and of your on top of your paycheck as well. And the last one was buying too much house. All right. So I'm going to give you my last thought on those topics, those money mistake that we talked about. So I would say that once you make your mind about wanting to study, make sure to research the field that interests you and that will serve you as you are about to make a long-term investment when taking out a student loan. And I tend to refer nowadays to STEM, which is STEM. I'm talking about the STEM occupations, which encompasses science, technology, engineering, and math. And so those kinds of occupation are in high demand nowadays and may lead to employment, as such as video game designer, because that's the flavor of the generation now, civil engineers, computer programmers, architects, and many more. Everything is technology driven nowadays. So when you do make that investment, think long and hard before jumping in, because you will be paying a loan for a long time. So when it comes to auto loan debt, um, cheap finance has probably helped more Americans in purchasing automobiles during the past year than ever before. So, however, if interest rate rise, individual with variable rate credit card debt or adjustable rate mortgages will notice an increase in their payments, making it more difficult to keep up with auto loan payments or take additional vehicle loans, right? And as far as career plateau is concerned, Here are 9 warning signals to look out for: workplace boredom, lack of possibilities for learning, a lack of advancement in compensation, a lack of opportunities for skill implementation, being overburdened with work, being in conflict with your boss, an organization on the decline, a lack of growth prospect, and a lack of required skills. And I have to say something about owning too much house because this happens so often. People see big house as being a status that is very costly to them in the long run. So too much house mean, to mention a few things, like high utility bill, as you mentioned, high maintenance cost, and high stress level. Okay, so which lead to some ailment along the way. However, it is a lack of housing liquidity and the significant danger of foreclosure that would keep me awake at night if I were in that position. So all I can say is that time alone will not resolve that particular issue of too much house. I can see only 3 solutions for that. It's spend less money, earn more money, or sell the property, right? And in the majority of cases, you will need to perform all 3. So avoid embarrassment, empower yourself. You are on the verge of regaining control of your out of control financial situation. And do not forget that we are here to assist you. So this brings us to the end of today's Merging Life and Money episode. Sorry for the extra time. I have run over by at least 7 minutes. And before I forget, Eric, tell the audience how they can contact you should they want or need to. And I think I have a banner for you, but in the meantime, let me check you here. Sure.
Okay.
Is that
Well,
you?
I mean,
Yeah.
the best way is just through my website, dudleyfinancialgroup.com, or you could go on LinkedIn and just look up Eric Dudley, and you should be able to find me. I'm in Florida, financial advisor.
Okay, great. I hope that you have enjoyed today's show. And as you know, I like to end my show with a quote, and today's quote is from an unknown author, and it reads, "Do not place your mistake on your head. Their weight may crush you. Instead, place them under your feet and use them as a platform to view your horizon." Thank you, Eric, for your awesome contribution to the show today. We will meet again next month on March the 17th with another great topic, as always. Thanks again. For more information about how to achieve financial wellness from the inside out and live a purposeful life with the money you have, join me next week, Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Atlantic Time for my Bermudian pips, and 10 a.m. Friday, Brisbane, Australia time for my Australian friends. Thank you for being here today on the Merging Life and Money Show. I am your host, Marie-Jo César. I will be back again next week. Until then, continue merging life and money. Bye for now.